My name's Tim Penning. Penning Inc. with an INK is my Twitter handle. I'm a full-time professor at Grand Valley where I teach public relations. Penning Inc. is my freelance business where I do some public relations consulting because I took a cut and pay from a nonprofit to teach full-time, where you have 3 times the education and half the salary of the real world. But I'm not complaining. Quick story. How many of you ever watch Saturday Night Live and you see the Mike Myers skit where he gets a little verklempt, speaking like, you know, a New York accent? I think of that sometimes talking about social media. When all of this is going on, I feel a little verklempt, and I want to say, I'll give you a topic. Social media is neither social nor media. Discuss. Because sometimes it feels that way. And this is really social. There are people, there's a blogger called Strumpet, which is a Shakespearean term for whore. And he did that on purpose. I won't go into the details why, but he uses the word friends. He spells it Z because they're not really your friends. They're acquaintances. And I read a comment recently. A guy said that his dad told him, at the end of your life, you will realize you really only have 5 or 6 friends. Everybody else is an acquaintance. And if you think about who did you ask to stand up in your wedding, or who do you call to come over to your house? Getting together like this, are we friends? Are we acquaintances? Something I think about. I want to echo what Paul Picura said. Patrick, sorry. I know the @ symbol. I don't know first names. But,
you added him.
Public relations is essentially about relationship building, mutual relationships, two-way communication. Even a lot of people think it's spin and deception or just getting publicity and attention. But that's what it's essentially about, and I think social media has to be about that too. It has to be about building relationships. In that sense, it helps us do it better than we've ever been able to do before. But we also have to be careful with it. There's an old theory, seduction of technology, that essentially means people get seduced by the bells and whistles of technology, and they forget that there's human beings at the end of the day on the other side of all of this communication. So we need to remember that as well. These are random thoughts. I can't make them rhyme, but in deference to E.E. Cummings, I am speaking entirely in the lowercase. So close as I get to poetic. I read a tweet, a retweet, an RT, and I made it a favorite because I love this, helping me make sense of these things. LinkedIn, and I was telling Maniac Dude ahead of time about this, LinkedIn is like a business meeting. Facebook is like a reunion, and Twitter is like a cocktail party. And I think that's kind of funny, but there's some truth in that. Wouldn't you agree? LinkedIn has a little bit of formality to it. I like that you can come and go and see what you missed. Whereas with the 2-week-ago change in Facebook, it's a stream, and Twitter's like that. And unless you use some apps and software like Twirl or TweetDeck, you miss what's going on. But when I talk to students and others, I tell them it is like a conversation in a room, and you enter the room and you have to leave the room and actually do work sometimes, and then you go back. And you can't be anxious about missing part of the conversation. You just have to realize, like in life, you can't hear all of your friends' conversations 24/7 all the time. So you have to participate, just calm down and don't worry about what you're missing. There are some software and technology that's out there that enables you to see what's going on. The recent change in Twitter isn't just at replies, but you can see when people mention you, so that's good for your company. A couple other points I want to make. One is that it is a myth that young people get this. They do not. I'm 45 and bald. I'm the first person to tell 75% of my students about Twitter. That may change. What students are all over is MySpace and Facebook and instant messaging and texting, and I hope not sexting, but they're doing all of these things, but they're doing it personally. They don't understand. They don't have the maturity or the instruction or the experience to do it with professional application. The people that are writing the books about this, that looks like a good one. I wrote that down. Robert Scoble, Shel Israel, Shel Holtz. These are the people that some of you are nodding. You follow them on Twitter. You've read their books. Paul Gillen, others. They're older than me, and they're the experts on social media because they have the business savvy to understand the application in a professional sense. The thing I think we need to think about is, and I blogged about this. I blog at GRPR. Grand Rapids Public Relations at blogspot.com. I've talked to some people from Herman Miller and elsewhere in the community. I think Cindy was one of them. How do you keep your personal and your professional online identity separate? And some people are very transparent in the profile. They say, this is the Amway blog, and it's here's the name of the person blogging, and then if you're an individual, you say who you are. And in one of them, you might tweet or blog or post or status updates or Facebook group information that's about you personally, and others of them, you have to be a little bit more careful and remember that you are the voice of the organization there. But you have to be careful because a lot of times those are linked and people understand you. And whether you mean to or not, what you say as an individual is ascribed to the organization where you work. I saw a tweet the other day from someone I respect who said, I love my clients, I love my clients, I love my clients, which means, of course, he was hating his clients at the end. I would want to call him and say, was I one of the three you were referring to? Or, there's another story about the guy who was flying into Memphis. He was a social media expert, and he was going to consult with FedEx about social media. And after the plane landed and the pilot said you can use your devices, he said, I'm here in Memphis, and made some disparaging remark about Memphis. His clients, who were soon to be schooled about social media, read that and were a little upset, and it made all the PR trades. Excuse me. So you have to be careful about that. So the last thing I wanted to talk about then is how I'm using it. And as a professor and a consultant, it's interesting, but I was saying to some people ahead of time, back in 1923, Time magazine was started by two 20-something Yale graduates. And they said, people are overwhelmed with information these days, with all the media. And we need a weekly publication that you can sit down just once a week and catch up and get perspective. They had tabloids. I mean, the first radio station started in 1919, and they didn't really have near the media that we have. And sometimes I think that's how I manage it. So Friday's a less busy day for me. I do dip in during the week, but I'm not on there like some people have Twitter on their phone. I have an iTouch, so I need to be in the Wi-Fi network. It's not 3G enabled, and I use my laptop where I go. But I try to catch up on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter at least once a week, if not once a day. I've also tried to put up some boundaries when students are posting questions to my Facebook wall. I say, email's the place for that. I mean, you can comment on my wall, but if it's, stuff about class, send me an email. And so that's kind of how I'm managing it. Hope that helps.